limits, man. Okay, calm down.
Israel is committing a horrific genocide against, well, it's an ongoing one, but they've really scaled up the genocide against Palestinians. And I think there's a lot of like background behind that. That Abby knows something about.
Oh, yeah.
Well, no, I mean, look, like, it is a very historic case. This is actually an amazing thing to finally, after all of these decades, 75 years of oppression, ethnic cleansing, occupation, bombing with impunity, finally, Israel's crimes are being heard in international court, and that is amazing. That's amazing.
Regardless of the outcome.
And this is regardless of the outcome, and I think the case is so clear-cut. There's no way to question the evidence put forward, and so really it's just going to be the legitimacy of the court at this point.
That's why Israel's only defense is to be like a horrific, narcissistic, like collective narcissism where they're just like gaslighting everyone. They're like, we are killing all Palestinians because we hate them, but also we're protecting civilians, and you're just like, what?
Well, yeah, they're like trying to use their entire case, right, at the ICJ was saying how much the Palestinians wanted to kill them, which that's not a legal defense. You can't use genocide as a self-defense, which is kind of what they're implying and trying to suggest, even if that were the truth, which it's not.
Even if all the lies Israel has told in the last almost 4 months now, even if every single lie was true, and when I say lie, I mean like all caps, like 40 beheaded babies, all of the disgusting racist claims they've made about like the disgusting Browns came just to rape all our white women, which is like a historically racist smear against anyone brown and black to just call them all rapists of white women. And we should all like emphasize that that's a racist claim to make if you don't have any evidence. On top of that, like everything, all the lies, the fact that they blame Hamas for killing everyone when it's like their own media says that they bombed their own people. Even if every horrific claim they've made about what they say Hamas did on October 7th, even if all of it were true, nothing justifies genocide. Nothing justifies killing babies, like 10,000 babies. Nothing justifies that.
Yeah. And, you know, I asked someone this today. I was like, how many babies is acceptable for you? Because she kept saying, but October 7th, but Hamas, but they killed these people, but they killed those people. And it's like, what is the threshold for you? Is there ever enough Palestinian babies? How many dead kids? Like, yeah, it's unbelievable that people think that they're going to convince anyone that what Israel's doing is okay because of something that happened on October 7th. And I just think that, you know, it's just very easy to say, for me at least, like, there's literally nothing you could tell me about October 7th. Nothing that I could find out about October 7th that would justify what Israel's doing.
Right, especially that article that came out in 972 Mag about Israel's assassination factory, how like Israeli intelligence officers admitted on record that we know every person in every building. We know if there's a 3-year-old girl, and we calculate that. And we methodically go through and take out these targets. And so everything is justified and rationalized. They know every kid who's being blown to bits.
You know, okay, so like having grown up in this country as the child of Middle Eastern immigrants, like in the United States of America, having grown up here as a child of immigrants who are Middle Eastern, and having like grown up during 9/11 and having experienced the racism from that, like I understand this country as a racist country, obviously, but I still am shocked by just how virulently bloodthirsty the people who run this country are when it comes to Palestinians, when it comes to Arabs. They don't care. Like we're all watching people carrying the limbs of their children that they've had to dig from under the rubble. And you see people have lost their homes and their families. They're living without shelter, without bathrooms. Women are getting C-sections without anesthesia.
And their amputations.
Babies, oh my God. I'm sorry, there's been so many phases of this genocide. There was the phase where they were just like starving premature babies. Israel was enthusiastically letting 3 premature babies die. And the people who run this country were like, yeah, that seems fair. They're not here. Like, that's essentially the message that I've received, I'm sure all of you have received, is that people in the global south are not human. And Gaza is the embodiment of that at this moment. It is like a version of what the West wants for the global South is like annihilation. Like if you fight back, we will kill all of you because you are not human. That's what I see right now.
And it's like this ridiculous false dichotomy, or not false dichotomy, but this ridiculous premise of like, what else is Israel supposed to do? Don't they have the right to defend themselves? It's like, how on earth can you pretend what they're doing now is self-defense? How is targeting journalists self-defense? How is targeting babies, like you just mentioned, Abby, self-defense? Or people having amputations without anesthesia? None of this is self-defense. It's, like you said, bloodlust, and it's because there is such a dehumanization of Palestinians in particular, Arabs in general, but especially Palestinians. The response from the United States is like, don't worry guys, we're having tough talks. We're having hard conversations. That's really how they're responding. That's what John Kirby says, that's what Jake Sullivan says, and then if you ask if they're committing genocide, they say that they don't want to play judge and juror.
I mean, yeah, Gaza's always been like a testing ground, and it's so disturbing to just see it as far as they'll take it, just being greenlit, and it's like everyone's just watching this unfold, and the U.S. is facilitating it all. And I think that we should talk about like what happened before October 7th, because
Nothing.
Well,
That's when history started.
in the context of, Abby has a fantastic documentary that if you have not seen it, it's available online for free, Gaza Fights for Freedom. And you collaborated on that with a bunch of really great people
because
from
I was
Gaza.
banned from getting in because, they always say like, oh, Jews can't enter Gaza. It's like, well, you're not letting them. Like you selectively decide who can be a yes man journalist to go in and tow your narrative, as we're seeing with CNN and all the censorship bureau that like, you have to like vet everything through the IDF before you can reveal anything. And so when I was there in 2016, I had all the proper credentials and paperwork, and they were just like, no, like you're a propagandist, you're banned for life from getting in. And so we worked with photojournalists and incredible heroic journalists who risked their lives running away from bullets at the Great March of Return during those months from 2018 to 2019, where over 200 Palestinians were assassinated by Israeli snipers. At that time, I thought that that was the most egregious thing Israel has ever done. And so we wanted to compile that story because the Western media was so one-sided, so disgusting, basically saying people were dying of head wounds without saying they were being targeted and shot by snipers, children, disabled people, medics, journalists, of course, Razan al-Najjar. But, and it was all wrapped around international law. Like, and you think if people just saw this, if they just saw what Israel is really about, like, it's like target practice for them. I mean, they released video. There's a scene in the movie where Israeli soldiers actually released in an internal Facebook group them picking off kids
And celebrating.
and laughing about it and celebrating. And people always ask, like, oh my God, how did you get that footage? It's like, they released that themselves because they celebrate that internally, and it got leaked. But all the people involved in the film are, they've all been rendered homeless. Their homes have been completely destroyed. They have no future at all. Maz Maza, the incredible, heroic videographer who filmed most of the material, he lost two brothers, not lost, they were murdered. Let's call it what it is. And, they're living in tents, they're living under rubble, and every day is a gift because they think they could just die at any moment. And how do you even check in at this point? And there's Ahmed Amu Artema, who was the incredible lead organizer of the Great March. His house was targeted because Israel's using this war to just execute all of their political dissidents, all the political dissidents who they've been basically taking names of. And so they bombed Ahmed's home, and his 10-year-old son was murdered alongside 5 of his family members, and he's sitting in a hospital with second-degree burns. So it's so real because everyone has a story. It's not just the people that I know, it's every single person in Gaza has lost almost everything because there's no rebuilding this. You can't rebuild that. Like, we've just let this happen. Like, not we, but I mean the West has facilitated this and let this happen. It's disgusting.
Empowered it.
Facilitated
Facilitated it, coordinated it.
But I know I've been talking forever, but I wanted to really quickly, like back in 2014 during Operation Protective Edge, another Orwellian, like dystopian name for just slaughtering Palestinians. I'll never forget, I was working at Russia Today, and I did this rant.
Get out.
Sorry, you have to leave.
Yeah, sorry, I'm a Russian.
Sorry, wow, out.
Do you condemn Putin? So I remember I did this video. It became viral in the Middle East because it was an indictment on Western journalism for not doing their jobs and not documenting Israeli war crimes at the time. So it became viral in Palestine. And right after that happened, Israeli forces bombed the Al-Sharouk journalist tower, and an RT cameraman's leg was blown off. And so our boss at RT was like, issued a stern letter to authorities being like, did you know that you did this? And like, what are you gonna do? And they were just like, RT has taken a side in the coverage. Of course we knew there were journalists in the building.
So disgusting.
And so I think that was like my first insight, like, oh, this is like a special kind of impunity and a special kind of brazenness that not even the United States would do because it cares too much about its image, but its appendage, Israel can and will do anything that it wants as long as the U.S. is
And
backing
there's nothing that's like too much for the U.S. to tolerate and enable.
Israel will murder babies on film and like laugh maniacally about it, like their soldiers will. Their soldiers will release footage on TikTok showing you how much they enjoy killing Palestinian babies. And then the Israelis will say we're the victims. It's completely batshit. Like, I don't even know what you do with that.
You were in Israel and you documented some of this genocidal rhetoric. We have a video of that. Can we take a look at that?
Yeah, this is a fun one. Go, yeah.
Sure, do it. There's only one way, like, I would carpet bomb them.
You would
That-
carpet bomb them?
It's the only way you could deal with it. Like, or try to stop them a different way. It never worked.
You mean all Arabs or Gaza or?
I believe that I hope to believe they're not, but I do think
Basically
they are.
saying all
'cause
Arabs. Carpet bomb all Arabs.
I don't trust them. You can't trust them. And that's the only way I believe that the only way is just to stop it completely.
I think that we're miserable. The Arabs make a פיגועים and we need to kill Arabs.
Oh, so funny.
Okay.
We'll talk about this.
All right, cool. Well,
There is also Jewish civilians that hate Arabs. Yeah, I'm not saying, but we have also people that like the Arabs and everything, like Smolanim.
I think another thing that the Jews should have rights to hate them. I think we have the right to hate them. I don't see a reason why not. I wouldn't trust any of them.
I like how the other guy was just like, oh yeah, like no, and he was like, no. We
Also,
have the
Ali,
right to hate all of them, and we
you
should
were-
carpet bomb them all.
You weren't like doing gotchas. You were just
Right,
walking
yeah.
in the street. Like and those there was, by the way, you should go watch the whole video. It's like
That's not the
it's
only-
like dozens of people.
Well, yeah, it's crazy. Everyone's always like, you wanted to make Israelis look bad. I was like, I genuinely didn't know what I was getting into at all. I had no idea that I was like in Nazi Germany until you just start talking. It was like the most basic question, like, how do you feel about the situation? Kill them all, carpet bomb them all. You're like, oh my God, what is happening here? I mean, pre-October 7th, I mean, this was just the every day in Israeli society. And you go back to the Great March of Return when they picked off people one by one for doing nothing but peacefully protesting, and 95% of Israelis supported the shoot to kill if you just venture too close to that artificial border fence in Gaza.
You know how many Israelis want a ceasefire right now, according to a poll? Like, I think from the last couple months, so I don't know.
0.01.
2%?
It's like 3%.
3%.
Yeah, wow, you guys underestimated. But tell me, like, who are you supposed to make peace with?
Right.
Peace with, when only 3% of people are, and it's probably like 3% that they accidentally asked an Arab, because like 20% of the population is Palestinians. They forgot to ethnically cleanse.
Yeah, the Arabs there.
They were like, oops, we left these villages here.
But the only reason that became so viral is because you never see Israelis speaking for themselves. I mean, they were speaking knowing that they were on camera. That's what's so bizarre.
Right,
about
this
it.
wasn't like a hidden camera.
No, this was like, okay, what are you guys saying off camera? If this is like
yeah.
what you're
this
proudly
is
saying
their,
on
like,
camera.
politically correct version.
And it's like all these Western journalists that just go and they're based in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and they just reprint press releases from the military. It's like, do they not talk to people, or do they all just like laugh about this?
No, they cover it up because, like, Isabel Kirshner at the New York Times, her kid is in the IDF.
Yeah.
Sorry, the Israeli army. I can't even call it the IDF.
IOF.
The IOF. No, but seriously, her son is like an Israeli soldier, and she is like their correspondent. That is such a conflict of interest. Could you imagine if the Beirut bureau chief for the New York Times had like a family member in Hezbollah? The only way that would be allowed is if they were like a self-hating Shia.
Right.
And anyone who, like, that's the only way that would even be allowed. And even then, even then, it's always a white person anyways. And it's not just her, it's like Mondo Weiss is constantly covering that. So a lot of them have an interest in covering it up, and they do.
Another thing that is so infuriating is the insistence that we don't want to kill them, but unfortunately they use human shields. Meanwhile, there's like a recent video of Israelis using a human shield. No one ever talks about that. And human rights organizations have documented Israel using human shields. They haven't documented Hamas using human shields.
There's a name for it. Israel has a name for it. It's called the good neighbor policy.
Oh, that's great.
They use a Palestinian to like basically, they'll make them walk ahead of them or make them go into someone else's home in case it's booby trapped.
Yeah.
Or so that if there's other Palestinians like with guns in the home,
Yeah.
they won't fire.
Right.
Because there's a Palestinian they'll force to walk in front of
Yeah.
them. Because they're the most brave army in the world.
And the other thing is this insistence
And
that the
Most
most
moral.
moral army in the world, right? And the insistence that it's so unfortunate Palestinians, they don't value life, they just value death. Israelis value life, not death. Meanwhile, it's unbelievable that they don't even do anything to forget. We know that they hate Palestinians, but they don't do anything to even free the hostages. I mean, not only do they not free them, they kill their own hostages.
Hannibal Directive.
And the Hannibal Directive, which says that you can't let hostages, that you have to kill the hostages, right? So that
Before
you
they
don't have
become- before they're taken
they become
hostage.
prisoners of war.
Yeah.
So that they can't use them as leverage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Gilad Shalit. They
And
don't
they've
want
already
that again.
killed like several hostages from, I mean, so many during
Right.
the
They've
Nova
only
Festival.
been,
and
as far
it
as
looked
I
like the highway of
understand, they've
death.
only been killed by Israel.
Yeah, I don't
right.
think, yeah.
There's one more comment about just the like the non-existence of the left in Israeli society. Because for my entire life, I was just, ever since I became awakened to the situation, the reality of it, it's always been like the left, like we need to embolden the left, and the left's going to change Israeli society from within. Not the case at all. I mean, a lot of leftists flee because how the fuck can you live in a fascist society like that? It's actually dangerous, more so now than ever. But when I was there were mass rallies, not only chanting "kill the Arabs," but also like "death to the leftists" and "death to the
Like a special
videographers."
slur, right?
There's a slur. There's a slur in Israeli. I mean, yeah, leftist is a slur. I met people who called themselves leftists, and they said, "I want the occupation to be more humane."
That's as far left as it
And
goes.
it's like, what? And then, and then also there's a saying in Israeli society that this leftist kid told me. He was like, yeah, there's a saying that leftists are AIDS and Arabs are the common cold. You have to get rid of the left before you get the final solution. I was like, oh, you guys are
Final
just-
solution. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Where'd they get that word
Yeah.
from?